Hey there, I think we're live. So if you're watching today, then if you're on YouTube live, um, I would appreciate it if you're brand new to the channel to go ahead and subscribe to the channel. And if you're on Facebook Live, thanks for being there. And if you could just let me know if you're able to see and view the stream. If you're over there, if you're able to hear it, especially. I'm guessing you're able to see it if you're going to reply to it. But if you're able to hear us, that'd be great. Just to let me know that. Okay, got a few things to correct this morning. It's one of those things that, after I got off the live stream last week, I started looking at the angle of this curve and the angle up here on the eye and realized that I got that wrong. Sometimes that happens. You just take a break, you come back, and you find out, wow, that's wrong. But that's normal also. Sometimes when you're starting out, you don't know that's normal. And you think, oh, I must be awful. I'm not doing something right. What am I doing wrong? Why does this happen to me only? That kind of thing. Hey, Deborah. Deborah is over on YouTube Live. Good morning. But you're not doing anything wrong, and it's normal to have that happen. Happens to every single artist. You'll get better at it. You'll get to a point where it doesn't happen quite as often, or you'll know how to correct it quickly. Quicker, I should say. I don't know how quick, but. And so that's the good news, is that does happen. You get better at seeing those things. But when you're just focused in one area and you don't come up for air for a long time, then that's what can happen. So, and it happens to all of us. No one's exempt from that. And so I never look at it as a negative. I don't look at it as something that's awful when it happens. I just notice it. Oh, that happened. And then I try to correct it. It's one of the reasons why I love this Grizzly method so much, is because it gives you more opportunities to correct things like that. Hey, Harry. Harry's over on Facebook. Thanks, Harry. Thanks for joining. And that lets me know also that that we're doing okay over there on Facebook, that he can hear us, apparently. I appreciate that. All right, so let me look at this angle a little bit closer. Now, I don't have the eyelashes in there, but I want to allow for where they're going to be. Now, I've got a couple of different references positioned, same reference printed a couple different times and in different ways. One's right across from me over my drawing desk. The other one is over here off to the left. And so it gives me sort of a different vantage point looking at each of those. Okay, so that's a little bit better over there. And oh, cool, Harry. Thanks for signing up. That's awesome. Congratulations. I'm really looking forward to it as well. And spending some time talking about, the Grizzly method and getting accuracy at the beginning. So very cool. Yeah, I'm excited about it. All right. Okay. I believe Deborah will be there as well, so I'm excited that she's going to be there. That's going to be a lot of fun. Okay. No, it's not out yet. I want to take a couple more moments and check it over, Harry, before I send out the materials list, because I want to make sure that I have all the optional items on there so that and make sure I don't miss anything. But yeah, and then I'm going to also send the reference out. Awesome. Yeah. Oh, Debbie's 2-timing it over on Facebook and YouTube. Make sure I get that little landmark in there. But I don't want it to be real dark. Okay. So I want to look at, some of these vertical areas, like right here where that edge of the nose lines up with the tear duct, things like that. Oh, did I get the wrong title in there? I can't remember which part we're on right now. I thought I had the right one. No, back to YouTube. Okay. So if you're looking at, so here's one of my references that I'm using. So one thing to do if you're kind of new to looking for proportions, let me move it over just a little bit, is you want to line up, the edge of that nose with the tear duct. And you can use your pencil often to do these kinds of things. And then edge of the mouth, where does that fall in line with up here? It's never going to be 100% accurate. It's going to be close. And then you use your eyes to make minor adjustments as you go. Okay. So minor adjustments over here to the overall shape of the nostril over here. So by shading this side of the cheek and looking at where that edge begins, I am in fact changing the shape of that nostril, right? So I want to look for those kind of things. Since I'm shading quite a bit over here, then I want to come back in here with a little bit of some more pencil strokes, some darker values over here. Generally speaking, if we're talking about a perfect head, Deborah, then that is sort of a rule of thumb. But no two heads are alike, but that's a good rule of thumb. But it wouldn't help in this case anyway, because there's a rotation. There's a slight rotation in the head. She's turning her head just a little bit. So that little turn makes a difference. The tea bag is aligned to the nostril. Tear duct, maybe? Maybe that's what you're talking about? Yeah, tear duct is aligned to the nostril. Tea bag should be aligned to the cup. So that's probably spell check throwing you off there on that, giving you tea bag. I figured that's what was happening, Deborah. Yes, the answer is yes. On a typical face and typical frontal alignment, the answer is yes. Yeah. There's always qualifiers, right, for um, each thing you're drawing, each reference that you're using. But yeah, generally speaking, it makes things easier when you have those general guidelines in your head as you're drawing, because then you can notice differences and say, oh, in this case, that's not happening. Okay. Take a look here. This iris needs to come down just a little bit more. Okay. Yeah, I'm using burnt sienna in Polychromos right now, Deborah. You're welcome. So I have a technical question for you all. I changed the audio setup a little bit, so I just wondered if anyone can tell a difference in the audio. It should be better this time than what it has been in the past. So, Deborah, you're asking why the dark indigo sometimes I use dark indigo in Polychromos, and then sometimes I'm using a different color like burnt sienna in this case, or caput mortem sometimes. The audio is good. Okay, good. Thank you. I guess that's what you're talking about. But the reason for that is the overall temperature of the reference and the overall amount of layers that I may be doing, and then how dark or light it's going to be. So there's a few factors, I guess, that I'm thinking about. But if I use the dark indigo, and I could have on this, it still would have been fine. But I would have had to maybe built up more layers in this case. I think that the overall temperature of the reference that I'm drawing now in this particular portrait lends itself to more of this warm overall kind of look. So more browns, reds, yellows, that kind of thing overall, rather than more of that cool base that we're talking about with dark indigo. But it could have, I mean, you can make it work, right? So just a choice this time that I made. And, sometimes it's just like a choice of paper or pencils, right? Doesn't always have to be the same choice in pencil lines that you use or the same paper that you use every single time. Sometimes you'll choose to switch and use something different. I am on Stonehenge, but I don't know that it holds less layers than pastel matte. But what it does is, and this is a toned surface. This is one of their colored surfaces. It's warm white, is what it is, and so because of that, partly because of that, I wanted to use something that would get me to the end result quicker than if I was using dark indigo. At least that's what I'm thinking. That's going to be my theory, going forward in this piece, because I kind of want to finish it sooner than later. I kind of want to finish it by this weekend, so I may just do that. It's going to take a whole lot of drawing to be able to get that done, though. Now, if I look at this vertically up here, it looks like we need a little more eyebrow up there. You're funny, Deborah. You're welcome. I don't feel like that was a lot of questions. Good questions. I'm on to decaf right now. Coffee. I only allow myself 1 to 2 cups nowadays of regular coffee in the morning. And because I like the flavor of coffee, then I switch over to decaf. Okay. This little area on the cheek right here that is slightly recessed can be very deceptive, but it also gives you a chance, an opportunity to show more of the form of the cheek. So leaving it out, I think, would be a mistake, a real problem. So, Deborah, you're saying you like an Argentinian drink? Sounds good. Herbs. Okay, that made sense. Very cool. I enjoy hot drinks. I drink just about everything hot. If I don't drink it hot, then I drink it room temperature. And I started doing that, I don't know, 15 years ago, something like that. So I drink tea hot. I drink water lukewarm, like room temperature. I just don't put ice in anything. I just never have, or I used to, I guess, when I was young, but I don't know, switched over to warm drinks, and I like it. I worked with a guy one time. He was talking about that, and he was just the opposite. He drank everything cold. He drank iced tea. He drank iced coffee. He drank iced water. Everything. Now, sometimes in these little recessed areas, like right here by the corner of the mouth, I think it's good to go a lot darker, and then use your eraser to, your kneaded eraser to mold that area and to reshape it as you take some back off. But at the beginning, I'm going to go a little bit wider, a little bit darker than what I need to. And it does seem to help a little bit with achieving that shape that we're after. I'll do the same thing on top. Now I'm lightly grazing. I don't want to press down a whole lot right here, because if I do, I can start to damage the tooth when I do that. I can take a little bit of this off on top and on bottom. And then right under here somewhere, there's a little bit of a highlight right in there somewhere. That's about right there, I think. I may have to change my mind on that later on, but for right now, I'm thinking it's about right there. Okay. So that's a little bit better for now. Move back over here. Maybe redefine the edge over here on where that bottom lip is. And I can kind of look at where the philtrum is, or really where the septum is on the bottom of the nose, down here. In some of my darkest shadows, if I start noticing that I've got an indistinct shape going on, then if at all possible, the better choice, in my opinion, is to go a little bit darker in the areas that need to be darker, then define more of the shape inside the shadow. So just like right in here, I'm going to go darker at the top edge of where the nostril is. And then I can define this shape down lower. And when I do that, it doesn't mix up my darks and my lights, because sometimes the tendency is to remove some of the dark values inside shadows, and then you can end up having some confusion between your value range. And some of the areas in the shadows will look like they are very, very bright, and they belong over on the lit part of the face, the lit side of the face. So I don't want that. Okay, so let me get back over here to where that bottom edge is. I think it's in there. That's another thing that, we could measure. We could say, okay, how far down does that lip go? And it may not be a perfect measurement with anything that I can use on a pencil. Sometimes it is, but in this case, it's not. So it's a little bit past, about a half of that shadow creates that center mark of where the cedar wood begins on this pencil right in there. So I'm thinking about that, looking at it. I'm looking at this bottom edge. I'm thinking about where that is. And then is there a baseline comparison anywhere else that I can make when I look at that? Maybe towards the top of where this bottom plane of the nose is, something like that, nearly, not quite. So I can keep looking around. Well, that's not a bad measurement right there. Let me move my pencil up. So right here, not bad at all. So maybe I could say the whole length of the eye, the opening there. And I've still got that measurement. Let's go over to the side of the eyeball of the iris. Not quite. I'm not going to have anything perfect, but I could say that nearly one length of where the iris is going to fit within the entire lips. There we go. And then from top to bottom, but then midway into that shadow from the bottom lip is going to give me a little bit more than what I have up here on the iris. So I don't know how this will correspond. Well, that's about right. It's about the same as my reference. I wasn't sure if it was going to be. So now if I go down here, let's look at that measurement first. That should be nearly the same. I think the top lip might be a little bit high, so I can move it down just a little bit. That might be more accurate. So somewhere right in here, probably. And then if I look at that, move that area that reveals the wood on the tip of the pencil. So somewhere right in there, it's about right. I'll do that one more time. So somewhere right in here and then up that way. So you might recall that we traced the overall outline of this and got some of our, a starting place on here to begin. And I wanted to show you how, that can be possible. But I also wanted to talk about the fact that even if you do that, like I could give my line drawing to someone who's never drawn before, and they're going to have problems with it. They're going to have problems with shading it because once you start to shade, all those lines shift and they lose their meaning. So just because you've traced an outline doesn't mean that you stop looking and you stop measuring and you stop evaluating marks and where that entire line drawing is, because it changes. Okay, this is slightly curved as well. Okay. Now it's much lighter right down here. So I'll remove just a little bit of that. And I'll remember that shading does go down farther. And the reason why I'll remember that is because I have an indication there now. And that's what that tells me, is that shading is going to go down a lot farther than what it is right now. All right. Make sure I'm staying on the frame over there. Okay, let's take a look at it. Look back up at the eyes again. One thing that's important to remember is that drawing and art is a skill. And so the more you practice any skill, the better you become, the better you get at it, right? So what does that mean? The better you get at seeing angles, the better you get at being able to look with your eyes and evaluate things. So that's the fun part about it to me. Hey, Nancy, how are you? Good to see you over here. So, okay, I could remove that. I think I will. That little area right there needs to be a little bit brighter. And we can see actually a little tiny bit of skin in the upper eyelid where this starts to turn and move back towards the upper eyelid. So I could just cover that up with eyelashes and shading, but it's kind of fun though to depict those areas. Oh, good deal, Nancy. Yeah, I'm glad you're out here. You caught us. I know the time doesn't always work out for everyone. Okay. Now, sometimes, like with the Grizzly method, we're going to not put the full value in every spot because we want to allow room for color on top. And so that can be confusing a little bit. And I recognize that. I know that can be a very confusing thing, and it can feel very odd or weird when you're new to that kind of drawing process. But it makes more sense once you go through it and you start to see, oh yeah, The reason I didn't make that quite as dark is because I needed some brighter colors on top, or I needed some full saturation of whatever that color was. Now, I believe you can still put a little bit of this value in there anyway, but you can still, make it a little bit lighter so that you can, function and put more layers on top. Hey, Lisa, thanks for joining over on Facebook Live. So Lisa says, I thought the grisaille, was the use of graphite and color with a question mark. So the use of what a grisaille method is like a monochromatic scale. So not using color or using one color like sepia or any one color. And usually traditionally, if we look back at the masters, I mean, they use like browns or some kind of dark color, but then they used various shades within that one color. So that's what that is. So that's what we're doing. We're starting out with one color just to get the values everywhere. It just makes the decision process quicker, easier, I should say, than you would than it would be otherwise, because you're not having to make decisions the entire time about the color on top at the beginning. At the beginning, you're only worried about value, which is the most important thing when it comes to representational art or realistic looking art. At least in my book, that's the most important element in drawing something that's going to look representational. So that's why I love using that particular method. It just makes things a lot easier. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and sharpen these. Now I want an incredibly sharp tip. I'm going to use my sand block for a moment and get just a really sharp tip. Hey, Lisa, I'm using the AFMAT sharpener. So it's an electric sharpener. It's called AFMAT, AFMAT. I just picked it up on Amazon, and it's one I've been recommending for quite some time now. I really love it. There are some other sharpeners that I like as well, but like there's a manual sharpener by Derwent called the Superpoint that I love, but it takes time, and I have to use both hands to sharpen it, and it takes a lot of time out of my time that I have to work on the piece. And so the AFMAT electric sharpener is so much faster, and I can stay focused on what I'm doing and be present in the moment of whatever this execution is that I'm working on. And sometimes I can lose like my train of thought, my focus, or whatever if I am taking time out and sharpening with a manual sharpener or sharpening with a knife, or the list could go on and on. You're welcome. Yeah, it gives you a wonderful point, and Deborah has experienced this, and I have too. Sometimes you don't. It has an auto shut off whenever you reach a sharp tip, but sometimes that doesn't always work. So you kind of want to pull it out before it tells you it's done. Sometimes it works really well, depending on the pencil, I think, sometimes, and the amount of pressure that you apply as you're sticking it into the hole. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to chew up all your pencils. But any sharpener can do that. Yeah, most of the time it does work well, but well, thanks, Margie. So, Lisa, you need new pencils, huh? Well, there you go. Never ends, does it? On all the things we need. Joyce, you're saying missed what pencils and paper. So we're using Stonehenge, Warm White, and we're using Polychromos pencils right now. So I'm using one pencil right now before we add color later. So I'm using the Polychromos Burnt Sienna right now. Is what I'm using. So Deborah is asking over on YouTube Live, but when the pencil comes to 2 inches long, then you need a manual one. Which one to use? Yeah, good point. So when you need that manual sharpener, because you've only got a little nub of a pencil left, what do you do? So like this, I stuck it in one of these beehive tubes, nesting tubes, and so now it's sticking out a little bit. I can't stick it in that electric sharpener by AFMAT anymore. So instead, I have to use I don't remember what it's called, like a Schoolmate or something like that. That doesn't give you an incredibly sharp point, not a long tapered point, because it won't go in that far, and so it gets the job done though. Or you can use one of those little Coombe sharpeners that you manually twist the pencil while you're holding it. Little tiny, awful little sharpeners typically, but I mean they're good for on the run, on the road, that kind of thing. When you're away from your studio, they work, but they just don't give you a very sharp point. Or they'll give you a sharp point, but it's not very tapered and it doesn't last long. Well, Nancy, if they work for you, then that's great. I feel like I'm sharpening constantly if I use that, because you get a dull point very, very quickly. But most people, now you may be different, but most colored pencil artists I've noticed, when they're new to colored pencil, the ones that I've taught, use a dull pencil to draw with. And therein lies a lot of problems, a lot of issues. Oh, gotcha, Nancy. Yep, makes sense. Yep, that's the only time you use that. Then yeah, that works. That's what I do if I have to. this part of the drawing process, it can feel meticulous and boring. And, this is a time that I like to listen to books on tape, listen to documentaries streaming in the background, that kind of thing. But otherwise, it does take focus, though, to just stay the course and simply add an even distribution of the pigment layer on the paper. But the tendency often is to get antsy, lose patience, and start wanting to press really hard. And on this paper, pressing hard is like the kiss of death, because you've removed the tooth once you've done that. And so I don't want to do that. I got to just take my time and make sure that I'm keeping an even distribution. And then I can evaluate it and say, okay, what's uneven here? Okay. All right, so now I need to scoot over a little bit, and I have these diagonal strokes going in this direction. If you notice, let me see if I can zoom in just a little bit here. Maybe you can see this better. Okay, so because of that, these diagonal strokes, then I want to hit it from a slightly different direction. And then I could also use a brush and get rid of some of this buildup as well. And it would make the lines in here that I'm seeing right now indistinct. And that's another good thing. Okay. Hey, Lisa, if you're asking me what kind of brush I'm talking about, now I'm talking about a stiff bristled paintbrush, but actually on Stonehenge, it doesn't need to be stiff bristled even. It can be a soft brush even. So some kind of paintbrush, and it'll just move it around a little bit. Not a lot, just a little tiny bit. So let me see if I have one over here handy. Ah, here it is. So here's a good brush to use for Stonehenge paper. And we can go ahead and just do this right now. But with an oil-based pencil like Polychromos, we've got a little bit of a buildup on the surface of some powder, for lack of a better term. That's what it kind of looks like and feels like and behaves as if. And so we can move that around a little bit. That's correct. Yeah, Nancy made a good point. She said, not as stiff a brush as you use on pastel mat. That's exactly right. Or on sanded paper, yes. We're going to use a softer bristled brush. Now, I'll tell you, another thing that happens is we've got some marks that are undesirable when we do this, and that's okay. We've got little starting points to counteract, to work with after we're done with the brush. Sure, absolutely. Yeah. It was so fun. I forgot how fun this was. Yeah, so we're getting that little buildup of dust right there, and it starts to do its own thing. And you got these little start and stop points. I'm sure you can see that. These little lines right there. So I don't want those. I'm going to have to deal with them for a little bit. And that's okay. The reason why I won't use a stiff bristled brush, you could if you're very, very careful, I would think. But on this layer, this is just a light layer on here. And so if I used a stiff bristled brush, I run the risk of damaging the tooth of the paper. And I don't want to do that. I don't ever want to do that. I don't want to damage the tooth of the paper. No, that could work, I suppose. Nancy using a large makeup brush is what she's asking about. That could work, I suppose. Yeah, in some of the tight places, you'll still want to use a smaller brush, though, I would think. So this is where, after I look at it, once I'm done, I want to think about, generally speaking, where are, these marks, or where's the overall value? Where's the shading now? And if it's generally in the right area, I could leave some of those little marks that the brush made, I could leave them alone. So I don't need to, panic and think, oh no, I've got a big problem now that I got to fix. There's no way to get rid of those marks or anything like that. Most of the time it'll work itself out, Some of the real pronounced ones I would probably get rid of. Just because it'll be something that is distracting to me, and I don't want to be thinking about them, the whole time. So going to use my kneaded eraser, and you notice I already have pigment on this one, on the tip of it, right? So it's not going to take off a ton. It'll take off a little bit. Oh yeah, Nancy, you should actually try that. You'll have to let me know what you think about it. Okay. So just here and there, just hitting it here and there. It helps distribute that pigment that we've already put down also. So yeah, you notice I do have some of those marks in there still, and I'll show you what I do with those. Well, this is a very clean, or cleaner area right in here. So I can remove some of that, especially where those high areas are in the anatomy here. Those highest spots, those pinnacles. Okay. Now, what I could do. Hey, Linda. Thanks for joining over on YouTube. Okay. I'm not going to worry about some of these over here at the moment, but let me show you what I can do though now. So some of these areas that make it look like a zebra right in there, I can just come in here with a few more strokes And I'm paying attention, to where it's a little bit lighter and adding those. Okay. Now it took away a little bit of my definition over here. So I want to add a little bit more of that back. Another instance of watching where your line drawing is, because it can start shifting and moving on you when you lose some of your shading. The benefits outweigh the detriments or the negatives, because now I have a softer blending everywhere with all of my shading, or most of it anyway. I have something to go on top of all of that now as well. It works out nicely when we can do that. Okay, let me see here. That is probably good. Oh, thank you, Deborah. Okay. Go right in here. There we go. Okay, let me see here. Oh, yeah. So, Linda, I do that self-portrait at night. We do this one on Monday morning. So this one is only one time a week, but I'm probably going to change that and work on this one to try to get it done. And then we'll switch back over to the self-portrait. I'm not sure what yet exactly the schedule will be. Oh, thank you, Cheryl. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining today. Okay. Now I'm going to just give a little bit of air out of this, not a lot, in case there are some loose particles, some loose powder, a little bit of that powder still lingering a little bit on the surface. I don't want to just blow it all away. One of the reasons why I'm not a big fan of brushes, I don't want to brush away. I'm talking about a brush to just brush your drawing to remove debris. I know we often do that. A lot of artists do that. I'm not a big fan of those, only because I do use it once in a while, but especially in this process where we're getting this light feathered kind of look in the beginning, if I do that, I'm going to remove some of that delicate shading that I put on there, and I don't want to do that. Okay. So I know a lot of you guys have signed up already for the Grizzly Method live portrait workshop coming up, and I'm so excited about that. I can't wait to meet with you guys and do that workshop. Still on pre-sale for just a little while. That was only for those that are on my email list. If you're watching today and you're not sure what we're talking about, that's what we're talking about. Something that I sent out to my list only. Okay. After the pre-sale is over, I will send it out other places. But so this is the second thing that I love about using that brush or getting all of this pigment down is now on top of this, you just have this nice, rich blend of the pencil working together. You're no longer just like in areas like this, you're no longer just drawing on the paper surface itself. You're drawing on that little area that has a buildup of pigment. And so there's this little elevated spot on top of the tooth. And that's where you are whenever you start to draw on top of this. And it just blends together so well. This little sweet spot that I just love. But you start to understand why, when you're using Stonehenge paper, why some people talk about, the process just taking so long to accomplish the completed piece. And that's the reason, is because it just takes a long time to build up the layers of pigment. And it can take a lot of layering. This particular surface can take more layering than many other surfaces. Sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes that's a choice that you want to make. Or maybe that's your particular style. That's a type of work you like to do. You like it to be something that you develop slowly and methodically. Nothing wrong with that. And the reverse is true as well. You may find out that you don't enjoy that as much. That's something that you don't want to spend your time doing. You'd rather render quicker. Nothing wrong with that either. I'm noticing a few little marks on the paper, and that also happens. That comes along with the territory as well with Stonehenge paper. You get a few marks here and there once in a while. By the time you build up all your layers, most of the time you'll not see those anymore. You'll have covered them up. But it can be distracting at the beginning. There are times that it's difficult to get them removed or lessen the visual pattern that you start seeing. But there's ways of doing it. You just have to be aware that that can happen on a soft paper, on a soft tooth, or a tooth that's real delicate like Stonehenge is. There's not a whole lot you can do about it. You just allow for it. There's no one perfect paper, in my opinion. So you have to figure out what works on a particular surface and what some of your best practices might be on the individual surface that you're using. Okay. Well, we've been going for a while. We're going to stop here in just a moment. But appreciate you guys coming out and being part of the stream today. It was a lot of fun. And thank you. And I hope you have a wonderful day. And some of you we will probably see tonight. Where we live stream again around 9 o'clock p.m. Eastern time. So if you're able to join us again tonight, that would be awesome. If not, then I certainly understand that. And for the rest of you, we'll see you next week on Monday. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop. There we go. All right, guys. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.